Alright guys, next we have the grid template columns and rows properties. These two properties are the most important properties inside the grid system because these two properties allows us to create number of columns and rows inside a grid element. How do we create columns and rows inside a grid? That we have already seen in the introduction video, but we will see them in more detail and what are the different components related to the columns and rows inside a grid system. Okay, let's see here. The grid template columns and rows defines the columns and rows of the grid with a space separated list of values. So whatever the number of values we will be defining for these properties, that number of columns and rows will be created inside the grid. And these values represent the track side. You already learned what is a track side, which remains between 4 grid lines. Okay, so let's understand them here. Okay, so this is the HTML file where we have 6 items, and this is the container inside which we have kept our item, and to the container we have applied display inline grid. So let's get back to grid. Yeah, and grid template columns and rows, we will see them again, and this is the border we have applied to our container. Now let's have a look of our page here. Give it a refresh. Okay, by default this is how our page looks like now. Now we have already defined display grid. Now let's define few columns. Say to define columns in grid system, we have a property that is known as grid template columns. So here whatever the number of columns we need inside a grid system, that number of values we will be defining inside the grid template columns. Say we need 3 columns, say 300 pixel, 300 pixel, 300 pixel. So these values will give us 3 number of columns, and each column will be having the width of 300 pixel, 300 pixel and 300 pixel. Okay, now save this, give it a refresh. Perfect. So here we have 3 number of columns, first, second and third, and each and every column has the width of 300 pixel. Yeah, and we can also define whatever the number of columns you need. Say we need one more column, so then define 300 pixel. We have one more column. Now we have 4 columns. Say, and it is also not necessary that each number of columns will be having same width. You can define any number of width. Yeah, so any amount of width that you can define. Say 300 pixel will be having the first column. Now let's say 200 pixel for the second column, 500 pixel for the third column. Save this, then give it a refresh. Yeah, 300, 200, 500. We may want maybe say 600 pixel for the fourth column, 600, and we may want 100 pixel column for the next column. Yeah, so this is how we actually define columns. How many columns do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So we have 5 columns, and each column has different width also. So this is how we actually define the columns. Yeah, and there are different ways to define columns. Obviously right now we have seen the first ways, that simply we can define the number of values that will give us number of the columns, and values we have defined in pixel. So the next thing, the column, that we have different units for defining the width that we have already know. So here also we can also define any number of any unit of the width. Say we can also define in percentage, say 30%. Yeah, say 20%. First column would be having 20% width, third column, second column maybe 15%, next maybe 50%. Any amount of values we can define inside the grid template columns properties. Give it a refresh. Yeah, okay, we don't need column here, that's why it was not working. Then give it a refresh. Yeah, 20, 15, and then we have 50%. Yeah, okay, cool. And we can also mix and match. So if you want any value to be in pixel, say 400 pixel, so give it a refresh. So now this time it is having the 400 pixel width. Yeah, so these are the different units you can define. one more unit we have inside the grid system is FR unit. The FR unit is the fractional unit that defines according to the free space we are having inside the container. I'll show you here what is FR unit. Say we want 3 column of 1 FR, 1 FR, 1 FR, 1 FR. So we have 1 FR. So we will be having 3 column and each column will be having width of 1 FR. So 1 FR means, let's see here. Okay, I'll show you. 1 FR means whatever the space inside the container we have, all those space will be divided into 3 equals. One that is the one free space, one fractional unit. So first 1 FR, 1 FR and 1 FR. So this is how we define FR. FR will be calculated actually whatever the extra space or whatever the space we have inside the container, those space will get divided equally between the columns, whatever the number of columns you will be defining. You may have 2 columns. Save this, give it a refresh. So you have 2 columns now. You may have 4 column, give it a refresh. You can see, and you can also define the values in like any number, like 1 FR, 2 FR or 3 FR. Just give it 2 FR, give it a refresh. So this 2 FR, now this time this 2 FR will be double than the 1 FR. So whatever the extra space will be there inside the container, first of all it will divide it into the columns, and the column which is having 2 FR will be having the space double than the other items. So again you can also do something like this, maybe 3 FR, give it a refresh. Okay, cool. So I hope you got the idea what is the FR unit is doing here. Okay, and one more thing we can do with the columns is that, say earlier at the starting only I have defined 3 columns, that was the width of I think 300 pixel, 300 pixel, 300 pixel. Yeah, so we have 3 column and each column is having width of 300 pixel. Give it a refresh. Yeah, nice. Now there is a function inside the grid system that is the repeat function. For example, if the column sizes are repeating again and again, each and every column is having the same width, so you can do that. For example, here we have 3 columns with each and every column is having width of 300 pixel. So how we can reduce this into a function, that is we have a repeat function. Repeat, how many columns do you need? Say 3 columns. Yeah, say we need 3 columns, and what will be the width of all of these 3 columns? Say 300 pixel. Save this, then give it a refresh. So no changes, because earlier also we were having the width of 300 pixel. So this is how we can make use of repeat function, so that you will not have to repeat the things again and again. So again, if you want 100 pixel, so this time we will get the 3 columns and each column will be having width of 100 pixel. Give it a refresh, you can see. Okay, after defining this repeat function 300 pixel, you can also get another column maybe of any width. You can say you want 300 pixel of the next column. So first you will get 3 column, then one more column of 300 pixel. Give it a refresh. Okay, sorry, I think I made mistake. What is the mistake? The mistake is that this comma. Save this, then give it a refresh. You can see we have 3 columns, first, second and third. Each and every column is having width of 100 pixel. Now the third column is here, 300 pixel. Yeah, this is how you can mix the values using repeat also, and using another value after the repeat function, maybe in percentage, maybe in rem, em, any values you can define. That's the grid template column. These are the things we can do with the columns inside a grid system. Okay, okay, after the grid template column that we have seen so far, now let's talk about grid template rows. The grid template rows accept the same or you can say similar values as we have seen inside the grid template columns. So if you want to define rows inside a grid system, so we have a property grid template rows. Say we want grid template rows, say 3 columns, maybe each column will, sorry, no, 3 rows, yeah. So each rows will be having a size of 100 pixel, 100 pixel and 100 pixel, sorry, yeah, 100 pixel. Now save this, give it a refresh. Okay, so here we have 3 columns, first, second and third we don't have any item, so that's why here we are seeing, yeah, here we are seeing that empty space because we don't have much column, sorry, much items. Yeah, so we are having this much items only, so these items already get into the first rows and second rows, so that's why the third row is empty. Okay, so similarly here we have seen earlier in the grid template column, so here also we can define the things in percentage or maybe 30%, give it a rephrase, you can see 30%, or you can say maybe let's add few more items, that would be good, maybe, okay, just 4 more, okay, let it be 6. So we are having 1 through 6 again here, so it will be 7, 8, 9, sorry, 10, 11 and 12. So now we are having 12 items. Let's have a look here. Okay, so here we are having 12 items, and it is actually overflowing due to the percentage that we have used. Yeah, so let's get back to 100 pixel. You can see how it looks with interface. Yeah, it is fine. Actually earlier we have applied percentage that was having some weird uh, visual here. Actually you might have learned earlier also. So whenever we apply a height, so actually grid template rows are giving us height for each and every rows. So this is actually a height we are defining for the rows. So whenever we define height in percentage or any fractional unit or any relative unit, what happens, it takes the relation from its parent, yeah, so that then only the things percentage and all from relative unit works. You might have already learned these things. So similarly that is happening here because this container and container parent is not having any kind of height, so that's why whenever you apply grid template rows, that will be defining height. If you define the rows height in percentage or maybe fr also, or maybe any relative unit, you may find some weird things. You may find that it may not be taking the height as you expected. That's just because whenever we use any relative unit, it takes the relation from its span, and here we don't have any height to the parent, so that's why it was not working properly. Okay, cool. Now let's get back again to the template rows. So similar to the template columns, here also we can use repeat function, maybe say, okay, before repeat function let's understand that fr unit for the rows, 1fr, 1fr and 1fr. Save this, then give it a refresh. Okay, you can see that it is taking the actual height of the item that we have defined for the item, that is it is taking from the padding. So 1fr is not working here. Actually this container is not having any kind of height, so that's why this fr unit is not working here. If say let's define height of the container, maybe height 100 vh, then this fr unit will be divided. Yeah, we have 3 rows, you can see. Yeah, container height is 100 vh now, so that's why we can see this 100 vh has been divided into 3 fractional unit, 3 fr unit. So 1 fr, 2 fr, 3rd fr. Yeah, perfect. So again you can also define 2 fr. So you can see it is taking the higher space, sorry, double space than these all rows. And one more thing you can do, yeah, that's all about the fr unit. You have already got the idea about the fr unit. Yeah, now let's see about the repeat function for the rows. Similar to the columns that we have used earlier, let's use for the rows also. Repeat, may say you want 3 rows, then 3 rows, and repeating each and every row is having say same height, maybe 100 pixel. Give it a refresh. 100 pixel. Now if you say 300 pixel, 300 pixel, perfect. You can also do 1 FR, 1 FR. Yeah, okay, let's get back. Let's remove the height and we'll keep it just 100 pixel for now. Save this, then give it a refresh. Perfect. So this is the grid template columns and grid template rows. Here is one more thing that you should keep in mind. So usually we don't apply height to any elements, so you may find that you may not be using grid template rows because because you may want the elements height should flow automatically. Whatever the auto height it gets, that should be having. So if you don't need the exact height of any rows, you can skip the grid template rows properties, but you know what is the use of grid template rows. So if you need, you apply it. If you don't need, do not apply the grid template rows property. Yeah. Now after the grid template rows and grid template columns, let's see one more thing about the rows and columns. That is what is in between the rows and columns. You might have seen that earlier we have discussed this thing. We have grid lines. Grid lines here, also grid line. So it can be vertical also and it can be horizontal also. So the grid lines remain in between the columns or rows. Here is one thing about the grid line. Actually this line we are seeing just because we have applied the border. That's why we are seeing this line. Otherwise this line would not have been here. Yeah, these lines are the arbitrary line, and sometimes inside the grid template columns and grid template rows you can also define the exact name of these lines. First of all, let's have a look here. Let's inspect the page. Okay, here we have container. You can see those arbitrary lines, that blue dashed line. Okay, here I'll show you again. Let's go to, let's inspect. We have already inspected our page, container, and then go to the layout. Here you will find the grid system. We have grid, and inside the grid you can see show the track size. Nothing is showing here. So the area name, leave it. Then extend grid lines, nothing is happening. Now let's see. Okay, forget about all of these things. So track size, you know what is track size. So area name, you also know what is grid area. Extend grid length, let it be. We'll discuss these things again whenever we need. But before this, let's tick out this. Okay, you can see here whenever we tick out this div.container here, the grid line appears here. You can see this dashed line. Okay, let me get rid of this border. Save this, then give it a refresh. Okay, I'll have to make it again. Yeah, this grid line, let's make it to the black. Yeah, exact black. So these are the grid lines here, and each and every track size or the cell size has been also assigned here. You can see 100 pixel, 100 pixel, 100 pixel that we have defined. Grid template columns 100 pixel and 300 pixel for column. Similar goes for the rows, 3 rows and 100 pixel. So 100 pixel. So that's the track size. Here we are saying that's what here track size. So if I get rid of that track size, it is not showing. Similarly, show area name. There is no area name. Extend grid lines, we don't need that now. Now we can also define the name of these lines. Yeah, so how do we do that? Inside the grid template columns property only we can define the names. So first of all, we'll get to normal values for the columns. Maybe 100 pixel, 100 pixel, 100 pixel, and here also 100 pixel, 100 pixel, 100 pixel. Now give it a refresh. Perfect. Now let's get to our container, get those lines, grid lines, actually take it to the black side. Now we were talking about, let's get rid of this show track size. Now we were talking about the lines, how we can name these lines. Actually, you may not need these all things to name the lines, but sometimes you may need also. That's why I'm explaining here. So first line, you can say, to the first line you can define the name, maybe inside the bracket here actually. So what was the name of this line you want to keep? You can say first line. Okay, and then maybe for the second line you can also say line 2, and here we have, and for the line third you may want to say line third, and line fourth ending line you may say last. Yeah, now save this, give it a refresh. Now we will see the name of the lines. Show the line, yeah, and show track size. Here we have show line numbers and line names. Show line names what we have kept first. Okay, let me zoom it here actually. Yeah, you can see here we have the first name, line 2 that we have kept, line 3, and last. That's the grid line here. It is starting from here, first line, second line, third line, and fourth line. Similarly for the rows line, but we haven't named it, that's why we do not see those names actually. Yeah, now let's name the rows also, rows lines. So just copy and paste, just give it a refresh. See our container line. Okay, you can see here now line, first line for the rows, second line, third line, and last line. And we do not have fourth rows defined inside our rows properties, and also we haven't named the lines also. That's why we do not see the last name. Yeah, so that's the thing, that's the whole thing about the grid line. So if you want to name the line, you can name the line also. If you want to skip these things, you can skip the line name. That is for the convenience. If you want to use those names, you can keep it, but we'll get back to normal 100 pixel 100 pixel here also. Okay, so use the repeat function, 3, maybe let's say 1 fr for the rows, and for the for the columns, and for the rows repeat 300 pixel. Save this, then give it a refresh. Yes. Alright, now let's get back our normal border, give it a refresh. Perfect.